This might be the only controller video you'll have to watch this year, because this one, it's not the most expensive, it's not the one with the most bells and whistles, but the package you have here is so cohesive. This is the Flydigi Direwolf 4, and I'll put on screen everything that was in the box. This goes for $39.99 on Amazon, and it's probably available for AliExpress or for maybe even less. I'll put on screen screenshots of what I can find. Now, they did send that one for review. That has no impact on my opinions. I always say it like it is. It has membrane face buttons. Feels like a good thumpy membrane button. Very good feel that we have under the buttons right here. The D-pad, it's really somewhere in between a tactile dome style button and a micro switch. The texture is a little different than what you have on the body. It's a little more soft, maybe a little more prone to sliding if you have sweaty hands a lot. Shoulder bumpers, whichever you want to call them, they're tactile. The triggers are Hall effect. They call them force switch. They're either analog. If you put the hair trigger on, you have a micro switch. So this is another benefit considering the price point. Already we're starting to see some premium features that usually you see in more expensive types of controllers. You have 2 extra back paddles. There is a dock attachment. I don't have it, but I'll probably put a picture on screen. And you have a switch for your different modes, which this is going to be X input, either using the dongle or Bluetooth. Of course, you can use wired. And then you have the Switch Pro mode. The sticks are also Hall effect, but they call it Force Flex. You know, I think this is something maybe some people won't necessarily like. Why would they just not call it Hall effect? The thing is, you have TMR and capacitive sticks on the market right now, and Flydigi has been taking a little bit of flack for still using Hall effect. However, I will say this, for someone that has tested well over 100 controllers in the last 2 years, this is by far, like, and when I say this, I don't mean this controller necessarily will test it, but I mean Flydigi, this company is what I should say, is easily top 3 in how good they tweak Hall effect. Now, companies will manage to get past them with TMR, but what they achieve with Hall effect is also superior to a lot of companies using TMR, even though the ones who are very good with TMR do manage to, in my opinion, overtake Flydigi. But it's not only about the sensor, it's also about the tension, about the ergonomics. And when it comes to tension, which is probably the shocking most feature on this controller, you have tension adjustments on a price point that is so low. The ergonomics are, it's very much an Xbox style controller, but it is a little wider. It maybe breaks the wrists a little more, which is something I like personally, because I find that it makes it easier to go from your sticks to face buttons or sticks to D-pad. It's just, it gives you a better alignment for your different inputs. So I do like the ergonomics. I think it feels very, very nice. It doesn't feel cheap at all. If there is one thing that the price point aligns, it is the housing itself. It is pretty much the same across the board. You don't really have any differences in terms of the feel itself. However, you do when we're talking about the sticks, the buttons, the D-pad, that goes without saying. But for the housing, what you have in front and in the back is essentially the same across the board. So this is a controller that you probably would end up needing grip stickers if you sweat a lot. I think it could be a little slippery for the people that get sweaty hands. You don't have any audio feature, so there's no 3.5mm jack or anything else when it comes to audio. This will also not work on a PlayStation console or an Xbox console. This is really for iOS, Android, PC, and Switch. It should also work on the Steam Deck because you have different modes. Now, usually I have this whole survey over the software. I won't be doing that in this video, but I'll put some footage accelerated on screen. I'd say for the most part, everything you have is all the bells and whistles that you should want for something that is entry level to middle end. We have here and then some. So as far as the feature goes for the software, it's all there. If there's something specific that you're looking for, let me know in the comment box and I'll do my best to answer your question. But overall, good quality, and it's nice that you have a paired software to go along with it as well. All right, let's get into testings so we can put this controller through its paces. Another thing that we won't cover in this video is latency, but you can have those tests on Gametechtalk. A friend of the channel, John Punch, is the person that is responsible for this website, and also the Prometheus 82 that I've used quite a couple of times. So whenever you're plugged in or you have your dongle, you just hit the Flydigi button, because this is a button, by the way. This will power the controller, and as you can see now, we have access to the controller right here. Oh, and while Aim Labs is loading, I mentioned the stick tension, and you can go between 40 TGF to 80 TGF. So what this means in a nutshell is you have the range of just about what you can find on the general market. Oftentimes, if I think of, for example, the Apex 5 or the Vader 5 Pro or many other controllers that have tension adjustments, they usually go beyond the range of what you'll find on a regular on the market. This stays more within that range, but it's still amazing that you have the ability to tweak it to your liking. So if you find that the stick is too responsive, maybe increase the tension a little bit so that you have a little more control. And on the other end, if you are more comfortable and more trained on that stick, then you probably want to reduce it because you'll have easier control over the range. I'm not trained enough on that controller, so I would increase the tension a little bit just to give myself a little more control. That's already much better. And of course, I'm going to activate the hair trigger because that's what I want. Not my best score compared to what I can do on a controller that I'm trained with, but between the software and the tension, you have a lot of adjustment that you can do over time to improve yourself. I know I've said this before, but I will repeat it probably a couple more times. We're talking about a $39.99 controller. We don't usually have this level of granularity in terms of the adjustments that we can do at that price point. I can tweak it, adjust it a little bit. I think if I lower my stick, it might do a little bit better. Let's see. Yeah, I was starting to tune in. And I also want to mention real quick, those triggers feel really, really good. You know, it's almost no, I shouldn't say almost. It is a necessity by this point for me to have hair triggers. If I don't have a hair trigger on a controller, it's basically not my go-to for sure. What I like with the triggers is that yes, you have a good quality hair trigger, but the tension to activate that micro switch when you put the hair trigger on is also not too high. And then when I say not too high, I mean the TGF, the pressure necessary to actuate the button, is fairly on the low side. So I feel I don't get tired by using those triggers. Usually I will feel it a little bit that it's working, especially in a test like this one. I was not feeling any of that, so that should be good also for long play sessions. All right, let's move to the next test. Now, this shape may not be for everybody, but for me, it's a shape I have come to like. And, you know, I didn't do my usual test, but what I'm seeing here is overall good for the diagonals as long as I'm really intentional by where I want to push. We don't have a pivot, so that might be something that is not necessarily compelling for everybody. But as far as like the rolling, it feels good. There's really no issues whatsoever here. So let's see in terms of inputs how that's going to feel. Yeah, I think the one potential issue that I'd see this D-pad having is not so much input commands, it's going to be the feel of the plastic. For me, it's that kind of very dry, almost grippy, but I'd say more tastefully done than a lot of controllers that do that. But if I was a person that gets sweaty hands, I could see how that could become a problem. So for someone that is buying this to be serious into fighting, I think it's feasible. Really, I think this controller is good enough for that, but you might find yourself wanting to use a glove, at least during practice sessions where you know that you're going in like deep, locking it in for a couple of hours. Yeah, you might want to have something because if you have that kind of skin that it grips onto, it might be a problem. Or if you have sweaty hands, it might be a problem as well. All right, let's move to the next test. And for a platformer, something that is not necessarily casual, I'd say the left-right is not the fastest I've seen. It's easy to do, but it's just maybe not the fastest. It's not unpleasant, however. This is a fairly stiff D-pad too, so, you know, something to keep in mind. So if you do play a lot of long hours on platformers, or if you're a speedrunner and you're looking for something that will give you a good balance between comfort and especially over long durations, I don't know that it's the best D-pad, but I do think that in terms of the quality of the buttons that are here, it's gonna do the job. It's gonna do the work. Just, it might be better appreciated in shorter sessions, especially for something like platformers, or if you want to speed running your games, especially retro games. But overall, it feels good, and not really getting that many missed inputs either. It's easy to be precise, easy to lock it in. And that is exact, man, I really love those membrane buttons. The thump of that membrane is delicious. It's exquisite. I don't know how else to describe it. Yeah, the left and right, like I was saying earlier, I don't necessarily think it's going to be the fastest controller, but the precision, you know, a lot of those moves I'm pulling here without blinking, except just now. But yeah, it does feel good. It does feel responsive. Even if I do feel like I wouldn't necessarily be the fastest for those trick plays that requires some very quick left and right. For example, right now, that would have been one of those moments. But yeah, beyond that, I think it's a great D-pad. Again, considering the price point, I think the best way to put this is it'll take you far in a lot of different areas, a lot of different game genres. But anyways, let's move towards racing and then the conclusion. Okay, of course, we have deactivated the hair triggers. Feeling a little bit of rumble here. Oh, by the way, the rumble is very silent. It's not a noisy controller at all. And when it comes to the rumble, the triggers are a bit, as I said earlier, right? They don't require a lot of tension, and I would say that is still the case when removing the hair triggers. So for someone that likes, you know, a trigger that has a little bit of resistance, which I find is a little easier to dial in, maybe that one won't necessarily be the best for that. But as far as just your everyday casual use, oh yeah, absolutely. It feels good. It feels precise enough. The comfort is nice. It's not too wide. It has a little bit of grip also when it comes to the plastic itself. I like the feel overall. They're very reminiscent of what you find on your Xbox Series as far as the trigger goes. The feel that is. I'd say just maybe they feel a little more loose and a little weaker in terms of the tension required to push them. That's why it could be good for comfort. It could be challenging to dial it in, is the best way that I could describe this. But overall, once again, I think they'll get you far, maybe not all the way if you are looking for something that is maybe a little bit more competitive racing on a controller as opposed to a wheel. I don't know how many people are looking for that these days, but if you were, I think there would be better options specifically for that kind of use. Everything else, I don't see why you'd have a problem. All right, let's move to the next. You'll probably wonder if it can power up the Switch 2, and it cannot. The Switch 1, it should do just fine. The Switch 2, it will not, so you will need something different. It also doesn't have amiibo features, so if that's something you were looking for, unfortunately this won't have it. But as far as gyro and rumble, again, not HD rumble, but gyro, it will have rumble. It will have, though, a rotary. And right now, I'm not getting rumble in Switch 2. I'm not sure why that is. Wait, is the rumble activated on the Switch? Maybe it isn't? Interesting. Okay, it might be that it recognizes the HD rumble lines of data, but because the controller doesn't have HD rumble, you might not be getting rumble in the game that otherwise would get HD rumble, which it is the case for Bonanza. Beyond that, let's just have a look. As you can see, gyro is working absolutely fine, no problems there. When I went into the option just now, I did feel a rumble. So it's not so much that rumble will not work on the Switch. I guess it will not work on games that absolutely requests to send HD rumble data, which is a different data line to regular rumble. So it's possible that the controller accepts it, but does not translate it, is the best way to put it. I think that's what's happening here, because if I try, you know what, let me go try a different game that should have regular rumble. Yep, and just clicking on the menu just now, rumble worked fine, but I'm going to go in gameplay just to confirm one more time. I'm getting rumble. So yeah, I guess it's going to depend on the game. But here it's working absolutely fine. Everything is shaking as it should whenever I have rumble. So whenever Mario lands, there's a little bit of a shake. Feels good. It's rotary. And yeah, no problems there. All right, let's move towards the conclusion for real this time. Look, it's not a controller that is supposed to do everything perfectly. I guess I'm going to say for the last time, $39.99. It'll get you far. And that's I think the best takeaway to this controller, and a takeaway that is very common with budget solutions, which is that it's gonna do a lot of things great. That is despite having a lot of controllers that are more expensive, that are, you know, in competitive territory, that will do things just greater. And that is no different here. I'm not trying to say that this controller is gonna beat something like a Vader 5 Pro. Obviously it won't. But if we go down to the basics and then some, you would be hard pressed to do better than the Direwolf 4, at least from what I've tested. I am behind on some controllers. There's a lot more that I need to test, so stay tuned if you don't want to miss all those reviews, because I have easily 20 reviews in the lineup right now of controllers. But this is one, at least from everything I've tried so far, that in my opinion absolutely takes the crown when it comes to having a budget solution. And if you're just, you know, playing casually on PC, iOS, Android, or on Switch, I don't see how you could go wrong with this one. I also like the fact that this is a great controller to potentially test features that you typically find in controllers that are way more expensive, and to determine if you like those features. Do you like having tension adjustments? Do you like having hair triggers? Do you like having mechanical buttons, at least when it comes to the D-pad? And I forgot to mention the back paddles they also feel they feel like the exact same thing as the D-pad. They sound a little different, but they feel like they're somewhere between a tactile and micro switch. Have you ever had a Hall effect stick? So they do feel a little different than potentiometers. If you've been used all your life with first-party controllers, this is probably the one to break the ice. Because, you know, when you've been in the hobby long enough, you see a controller at $200 and you're like, whoa, that's way too expensive. But then you got to experience controllers that were 100, 120, 130. And then you understand that there is a difference when you spend 4 or 5 times the price. And I still believe that to be true. But back to what I was saying a moment ago, you could spend $40 on a whole lot of products that would not achieve not even a fraction of what you can do with the Direwolf 4. So that is why it is easily the contender for 2026 going forward as the king of budget controllers, at least for the platforms that this one covers. If you have questions, if you have inputs, comments, anything, let me know. You have the comment section just for that. As always, if you enjoyed the content, consider hitting the like and the subscribe button to not miss any future ones. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and to Flydigi for sending the Direwolf 4. My name is Clef, and I'll see you on the next one. Peace!